In the world of late-night television, where polished banter and rehearsed charm typically dominate, a recent episode of Late Night with Seth Meyers took an unexpected turn that left audiences buzzing. The guest was none other than Blake Shelton, the country music superstar known for his quick wit, laid-back demeanor, and long tenure as a coach on The Voice. Shelton appeared on the show to promote his latest album, for recreational use only, and discuss his life after stepping away from the reality singing competition. Fans tuning in expected the usual light-hearted exchange, perhaps some playful jabs about his marriage to Gwen Stefani or his Oklahoma ranch life. However, what unfolded was far from the typical late-night fare. As Seth Meyers began the interview, the atmosphere seemed cordial, with Shelton sharing stories about his new music and his quieter life on the ranch. But a subtle shift occurred when Meyers, known for his sharp comedic style, pivoted to a question about Shelton's views on the evolving country music scene. The question, seemingly innocuous, touched on Shelton's past comments about the genre's shift toward pop influences, a topic that has long been a lightning rod for a debate among country music purists. Shelton's smile tightened, and his response carried a hint of defensiveness, signaling that the conversation was veering into uncharted territory. As the exchange continued, Meyers pressed further, asking whether Shelton felt newer artists were diluting the genre's authenticity, a question that echoed criticisms Shelton had faced before. The audience, sensing the tension, grew quieter, and what began as a friendly chat started to feel like a verbal sparring match. Shelton, never one to shy away from speaking his mind, pushed back, asserting that his comments had been misconstrued by the media. He emphasized his support for new artists, citing his mentorship on The Voice as evidence of his commitment to the genre's future. The back and forth grew heated, with Meyers attempting to lighten the mood with a joke, but Shelton wasn't having it. His frustration was palpable, and the interview took a dramatic turn when he accused Meyers of twisting his words for the sake of a soundbite. The studio, usually filled with laughter, fell into an uneasy silence as viewers at home leaned closer to their screens, sensing that something unprecedented was about to unfold. The tension in the studio escalated as Blake Shelton leaned forward in his chair, his trademark charm giving way to a steely resolve. He wasn't there to be reduced to a caricature of a country singer, and he made that clear. Meyers, caught off guard by Shelton's intensity, tried to steer the conversation back to safer ground, bringing up Shelton's recent collaboration with Gwen Stefani, but Shelton wasn't ready to let the previous topic go. He doubled down, calling out what he saw as a pattern of misrepresentation in the media, particularly when it came to country music and its artists. His voice, steady but firm, carried the weight of years spent navigating stereotypes about his genre and his identity. The audience, still processing the shift in tone, began to murmur, unsure whether to applaud Shelton's candor or brace for what might come next. Meyers, a seasoned host, attempted to diffuse the situation with his signature self-deprecating humor, but Shelton's focus remained unwavering. He spoke passionately about the diversity of country music, referencing artists like Chris Stapleton and Casey Musgraves, who have pushed boundaries while staying true to the genre's roots. The conversation, now less an interview and more debate, highlighted a divide between the mainstream media's perception of country music and the reality lived by its artists. Shelton's frustration peaked when he challenged Meyers directly, asking why late-night shows often seem to mock country music rather than celebrate it. The question hung in the air, unanswered, as the show cut to a commercial break. Social media exploded during the pause, with fans and critics alike dissecting the exchange. Hashtags like #BlakeShelton and #Seth Meyers began trending, as viewers debated whether Shelton was out of line or refreshingly honest. When the show returned, the tension hadn't dissipated. Meyers, visibly rattled, tried to pivot to a lighter topic, but Shelton's demeanor suggested he was still on edge, ready to defend his stance if pushed further. As the interview resumed, the atmosphere in the studio remained charged. Blake Shelton, now fully aware of the moment's weight, seemed determined to make his point without being sidetracked by the usual late-night fluff. He spoke at length about his journey in the music industry, from his early days in Nashville to his rise as a household name. His tone was reflective but pointed, as he recounted the challenges of being pigeonholed as just a country singer. This phrase, which had been used lightly by other hosts in the past, became a focal point of his argument. Shelton argued that the label diminished the complexity of his work and the genre as a whole. He cited his collaborations with artists outside country music, like Gwen Stefani and Post Malone, as evidence of his versatility. Meyers, sensing an opportunity to regain control, tried to pivot to a humorous anecdote about Shelton's ranch life, but the country star wasn't ready to move on. He leaned into the conversation, addressing the audience directly and asking them to consider how media narratives shape perceptions of artists like him. The move was bold, breaking the unspoken rule of keeping late-night interviews light and promotional. The audience responded with a mix of applause and nervous laughter, unsure how to process the shift from entertainment to something more raw. Meyers, visibly uncomfortable, tried to interject with a question about Shelton's upcoming tour, but the country star waved it off, saying he wanted to set the record straight first. The exchange grew more intense as Shelton accused the media of creating a caricature of country artists as unpolished or out of touch, a stereotype he'd fought against his entire career. The studio lights seemed to burn brighter as the confrontation reached a new peak, with Shelton's words resonating with anyone who'd ever felt underestimated or misunderstood. The turning point came when Seth Meyers, perhaps sensing the interview slipping further out of his control, made a comment that struck a nerve. In an attempt to lighten the mood, he quipped that Shelton seemed awfully serious for a guy who sings about pickup trucks and beer. The remark, meant as a joke, landed like a punch. Shelton's face hardened, and he leaned back in his chair, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make the audience squirm. Then, in a calm but cutting tone, he delivered a response that would soon go viral. "I'm not just a country singer, Seth. I'm a songwriter, a producer, a husband, a stepdad, and a guy who's been doing this for over 20 years. Maybe it's time you all stopped putting me in a box." The audience erupted in applause, but the tension between host and guest was undeniable. Meyers, clearly taken aback, tried to laugh it off, but the moment felt like a mic drop. Shelton's words weren't just a defense of himself, they were a broader statement about respect, identity, and the power of labels. Social media lit up with clips of the exchange, with fans praising Shelton for standing up to what they saw as a dismissive comment. Critics, meanwhile, argued that Meyers was simply doing his job as a host, using humor to keep the conversation engaging. The debate raged online, with some calling the moment a refreshing dose of authenticity and others labeling it an awkward overreaction. Back in the studio, the producers seemed unsure how to proceed. The show was live, and there was no script for this kind of confrontation. As the segment continued, Shelton remained composed but resolute, answering Meyers' subsequent questions with a measured tone that suggested he was done playing the genial guest. The confrontation reached its climax when Blake Shelton, visibly frustrated, made a move that stunned the audience. After another round of questions that seemed to skirt around the core issue, Shelton stood up from his chair, removed his microphone, and said, "I'm done here. I came to talk about my music, not to be a punching bag." The studio fell silent, with Meyers' jaw visibly dropping as Shelton walked off the set. The cameras lingered on the empty chair for a moment before cutting to an unprepared Meyers, who stammered through a transition to the next segment. The moment was electric, a rare break from the polished facade of late-night television. Social media erupted, with clips of Shelton's exit racking up millions of views within hours. Fans hailed him as a hero for standing up to what they saw as media bias, while others criticized him for being overly sensitive. The incident sparked a broader conversation about the role of late-night hosts in challenging their guests and the fine line between humor and disrespect. Some pointed out that Meyers, known for his sharp wit, may have underestimated how his comments would land with a guest like Shelton, who has long been vocal about his pride and his roots. Others argued that Shelton's reaction was disproportionate, given the light-hearted nature of the format. Regardless, the walk-off was a moment of television history, one that would be dissected on platforms like X and TikTok for days to come. The hashtag #BlakeWalksOff trended worldwide, with memes and reaction videos flooding the internet. In the aftermath of the incident, The narrative around Blake Shelton's appearance on Late Night with Seth Meyers took on a life of its own. News outlets picked up the story, with headlines ranging from Blake Shelton storms off set after clash with Seth Meyers to country star School's late-night host on Respect. Commentators weighed in, with some praising Shelton for his authenticity and others questioning whether he'd overplayed his hand. On X, fans shared clips of the exchange, with many pointing out that Shelton's frustration seemed to stem from years of being stereotyped by the media. Posts like "Blake Shelton just said what every country artist is thinking and Seth Meyers got checked and deserved it" gained traction, while others defended Meyers, arguing that his job is to push boundaries and create engaging television. The incident also reignited discussions about the treatment of country music in mainstream media, with some fans pointing to similar moments where artists like Dolly Parton or Garth Brooks faced subtle condescension. Meanwhile, Shelton remained silent on the matter, letting the viral moment speak for itself. Behind the scenes, reports suggested that the show's producers were caught off guard by the walk-off, with no contingency plan in place for such a dramatic exit. Meyers, in a later episode, addressed the incident with a mix of humor and contrition, acknowledging that he may have misjudged the tone of the interview. The apology, however, did little to quell the online debate, which continued to rage as fans and critics dissected every word of the exchange. The fallout from Blake Shelton's walk-off extended beyond the immediate buzz, sparking a broader conversation about authenticity, media representation, and the pressures faced by public figures. For Shelton, the incident was a chance to reclaim his narrative, pushing back against years of being reduced to a stereotype. His supporters argued that his reaction was a long overdue stand against the dismissive attitudes often directed at country artists. They pointed to his extensive career of 30 #1 singles, 9 Grammy nominations, and a transformative role on The Voice as evidence that he's far more than just a country singer. Critics, however, questioned whether Shelton's response was strategic, designed to generate buzz for his new album. Some suggested that the walk-off was a calculated move, noting that it kept him in the headlines at a crucial time for his career. Regardless of the intent, the moment resonated with the wide audience, particularly those who felt their own identities had been oversimplified or misunderstood. The incident also shed light on the challenges of late-night television, where hosts must balance humor, provocation, and respect. For Seth Meyers, the episode was a rare misstep in an otherwise stellar career, but it served as a reminder that even the most seasoned hosts can misjudge a guest's boundaries. The online reaction continued to evolve, with think pieces exploring the cultural significance of the moment and fans creating montages of Shelton's most outspoken interviews. The walk-off became a symbol of standing up for one's truth, whether in the context of music, identity, or personal values. As the dust settled, Blake Shelton's confrontation with Seth Meyers remained a defining moment in his public persona. It was a reminder that beneath the affable cowboy exterior lies a man unafraid to defend his legacy and his genre. The incident didn't just dominate headlines, it sparked a movement among fans who rallied around the hashtag #NotJustACountry Echoing Shelton's words from the interview. The phrase became a rallying cry for anyone who's ever felt underestimated or boxed in by labels. For the country music community, it was a moment of vindication, highlighting the genre's depth and diversity in the face of mainstream media's often narrow portrayal. Shelton's walk-off also prompted reflection within the television industry, with some hosts and producers reportedly reevaluating how they approach interviews with artists from less mainstream genre. While Shelton and Meyers haven't publicly reconciled, sources close to the show suggest that there's no lingering animosity, and the incident is seen as a product of live television's unpredictable nature. For viewers, the moment was a rare glimpse into the raw, unfiltered side of a celebrity who spent decades in the spotlight. It was a reminder that even in the polished world of late-night TV, authenticity can still break through. As Shelton continues to promote his new album and enjoy life on his Oklahoma ranch, the incident will likely remain a footnote in his storied career, but a powerful one. It's a story of standing up, speaking out, and refusing to be defined by someone else's narrative. A message that resonates far beyond the studio lights of Late Night with Seth Meyers.